I could name 50 people I've known through my whole journey that, yeah, they're sober, but they don't live in recovery and they're miserable. And I would have drank if I were them day one of being in that mindset. And, right now, and I think in my mind, I have stages of my recovery, right? And so I'm sure everyone does to a degree, but, like I said, the last 3 months have been kind of a roller coaster for me. And so now my recovery is, like I said, trying to embrace the unknown, being okay with whatever outcome comes, patience, not having control, right? I a lot of times think I can will things into existence, and sometimes I can, right?
All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Finding New Waters. My name is B. Reeves. I'm the Director of Business Development at New Waters Recovery here in Raleigh. And I am sitting here with our CEO, Justin McClendon, and our special guest today in Dallas, Texas, Fritz Deichert. Welcome, Fritz.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming
Yeah,
on.
thank you for being here. It sounds like you had a little bit of a interesting travel last few days. Why don't you tell us what happened?
Yeah, so I'm here in Dallas, and we got the once or twice a year the ice storm that we get an inch of snow and the whole city shuts down. And I'm a big Penn State fan, and I was with my dad going to meet my uncles to go to Penn State versus Notre Dame in Miami, and we sat on a runway for 4 hours deplaned, back on a runway 2 hours, couldn't get off the plane, landed in Miami at halftime, got in a rental car, got to the game, middle of the third quarter, roller coaster, they lost, tragically, heartbreakingly. We lost our rental car because we didn't pay attention to where we parked. I was a lot of screaming, God grant me the serenity. My dad and I were we walked 15,000 steps in 2 hours from midnight till 2.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it was a lot. And so we found the car, 2 hours of sleep, got another plane, got delayed for 4 more. It was a long weekend. And now I'm back in Dallas and it's 50 degrees and sunny. So it's kind of how it goes here.
There you
I
go.
hear it. Well, I'm glad you were able to maintain some serenity in in that situation, because that's really the test, isn't it? That's when, those great days are when everything goes like that and we still stay sober. So I'm glad you got through it.
Yeah, I think sometimes everyone always asks me, like, is New Year's hard? Christmas is, if you go to a wedding, that stuff doesn't bother me. It's like that night, it was late and we couldn't find the car. Like, I didn't even care that Penn State lost the game. I'm pretty used to it by now, but it's just, who do you reach out to? Who are you with? I was so grateful I was with my dad. We were laughing. I've been sober for 10 years, but before I got sober, my dad and I fought pretty rough and bad. And 15 years ago, one of us would have pushed the other one off of a bridge, like not in the literal sense. And we've been laughing about it the last 2 days. He was having PTSD, said every time any of the NFL games showed like an overhead blimp view of a stadium, he was like looking at the parking lots of the very stadium to see if we would have gotten lost there or not. But yeah, I mean, I think those days, those are the times that I get, it's not like I'm triggered or going to use, but that's when the emotions come and I get so internally claustrophobic. And, I've really been practicing for the last 3-4 months is kind of just accepting things, and it's out of your control, and fear of the unknown. And it was like I was laughing with my dad. I've had like kind of a rough 30 or 90 days and 3 months, and it was kind of like everything just compacted into this 14-hour journey. And I'm getting tested on, okay, if we don't find the car, what do? We both leave the next day, my meds, my iPad, his stuff, my golf clubs, and it kind of becomes almost like fight or flight. And it's just kind of, okay, I wasn't disappointed that we missed the first, 70% of the game. I wasn't disappointed I sat on an airplane. I've really been doing some good work with my therapist here, and that's kind of been the key. And so I was telling my dad last night, it's just funny because these things that people think get you are not the things that really, get your blood pumping and make you kind of want to break down.
Yeah. I mean, we were just talking about this before we recorded too. It's the things when I make mistakes in sobriety that are just kind of bonehead thing, that's when I'm like, oh my God, how could I be even dumber now than I was before I got sober? I was just telling them, this was about a month ago. I was flying early to Atlanta, and my flight was at 7 a.m. I woke up at 4:45, got up in plenty of time, totally packed the night before, got up, did my morning routine. Everything was good. I got to the airport 2 hours early, checked my golf clubs. I got my carry-on with me, my backpack, and I get to the gate to go look at my gate to have eyes on it before I go to the bathroom and get breakfast and coffee 2 hours early. And I'm almost to the gate, and I realize I left all my clothes. I left my luggage in my girlfriend's living room or dining room, and totally packed, ready, just sitting there for me to wheel it out the door. But just, I mean, completely spaced. And
Right.
when I do stuff like that, and then of course I had a panic attack, like, how am I going to, go about my day with no dop kit, no clothes in Atlanta? And guess what? Everything was fine.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Where there's a will, there's a way, right?
That's right.
That's right.
Well, so tell us, what all do you do, Fritz?
Yeah, so I'm a recovery coach, sober coach, life coach, whatever you want to call it. I'm a coach here in Dallas. I do interventions, not the classical intervention. It's not, everybody sit down, write a letter, aha, gotcha, here we go. It's more of guys that probably know they're gonna go to treatment or their families have been talking about it a lot, and maybe it's in Dallas or in Austin or wherever, and I spend 7 or 8 hours with them in one day, maybe a second day, play golf, go eat lunch, help them play the tape forward of what happens if they turn down going to treatment, and so I do that. I'll do transports. I get a lot of calls for you can call it consulting or whatever. I don't really call it part of my profession, but just help people get to where they need to go. Um, I've been doing this for almost 8 years now, I guess, or yeah, 7.5, 8 years, and so a lot of what I do is doing stuff different than the people that tried to help my parents at times when they were trying to get me help. I remember, some people would blow my parents off or I think maybe take advantage, and I see it all the time in our field. I'm sure y'all do too, of just, very unethical, money driven. Sometimes I think it feels like power, almost control. And so I try to, I base my work life off of doing the opposite of that, I guess. And so, yeah, I'm man on the ground. Eric Button of Burning Tree told me that when I first started this is kind of where things are going, where it's man on the ground. I'm day to day with my clients. I text them. I know what's going on. I'm in touch with the families all the time. I kind of just coordinate, therapy, psychology, psychiatry. Are they working out? Are they going to school? Are they going to their job? Whatever they're doing, I try to make sure everyone's on the same page. Um, and just kind of help people devise a plan. And, I want my clients to set their own goals, attainable. Get out of rehab. I'm going to run a marathon. It's like, when was the last time you ran a mile, right? I'm guilty of it, right? Like, I have gotten back in the workout kick, and it's like, okay, I'm going to run a marathon once a month for all of 2025. And it's like, dude, you're gassed after 7 miles. That's like, what, a fourth of the way? And so, I just try to help my clients with that kind of stuff, whatever it is, all ages. I work a lot with high school guys. I think they can my brain is perpetually a 17-year-old, I think, at times, so we can relate, and I'm not some scary dude. I show up as is. I'm not taking notes and just kind of meet people where they're at to try to get them the help they need, whatever that looks like. I'm a firm believer there is no cookie cutter way. And so, yeah, I try to help facilitate people, growing and living a better life than they were before they started their journey.
I hear you. How did you find your way into this field?
Yeah, so I was either 2 or 3 years sober, right in between, and somebody approached me and they were gonna start their own company. And she said, "Do you wanna work with the guys?" And I said, "Yeah." I wasn't sure what was gonna lead, and I got all the credentials and did all the classes, and we hit the ground running. And I had no expectations for what it would look like. And here we are, and I feel pretty established as in my profession, which is a really good feeling. It's one of the few things I can probably pride myself on is I'm good at my job. I've done a really good job over the last however many years, and um, I just like it. I like people. I like to ask questions, meet people's families, get involved, help my guys grow. Sometimes the best ones are like the 2-day little interventions where for 7 hours. It's like, I know why this guy needs to go to treatment. His wife's gonna leave him or his parents are cutting him off, and I kind of have the ability to share my own stuff so I can connect, right? Like, I've been in therapy my whole life, and I've had therapists that, you say, "Oh, how was your holidays?" "No, I don't talk about my personal life," and I get it. My therapist right now, Kay Fontenot, shout out. She meets me at a human level, and so I have the ability to do that with my clients, and so, what I really like about what I do is technically I'm a licensed peer recovery coach. So peer, I think, you're even. And I think sometimes people see a therapist or go to treatment or they work with a case manager and they think that person's above them. And I think that puts the client at a real disadvantage. So I meet them right there. If I have a crappy day, I'll tell them, I'm going through this. This is what's going on, right? Not everybody, I have my own boundaries with everyone, but I want them to see that I still have, like, really tough times, like this weekend, small
Yeah.
things, breakups, people passing away in my life, and this is how I deal with it, right? I don't just lecture them. It's like I show them just by I talk to them every day. My grandfather passed away, I guess, a month ago, and I was in Louisiana, and my clients were texting me asking me how I was doing, and, it wasn't, "Well, to get through this, I'm doing this, this, and this." It was just kind of by showing them it's, I'm with my family. Oh, I had to take some time away from everybody. I could feel a fight brewing at the kitchen table. Emotions are on edge, right? And so I get to meet my guys where they're at, and they kind of meet me where I'm at. And that's probably the part I like the most is the connection with these people. And I get to meet a lot of cool people like y'all, a lot of treatment centers, sober livings. Some of my best friends in the world now are people I met through work, and they're not just my work friends. There's guys and I lean on in the field all the time that, uh, I don't know where I'd be without him. So, that's kinda got into it that way, and I stayed in it because I liked what kind of the mission was and how I could, help people, you know, walk through life with them, right? I always say I sit in the passenger seat and I let you drive, and I'm never gonna drive the steering wheel. But if you ask for my opinion, I'll tell you what I think. But if you wanna go left and I don't think we should go left, I'm ready for you to put in reverse and we can go right. Maybe right was wrong, and, that's just kinda how I deal.
Fritz, is there a particular like age group or kind of demographic that you feel like you work best with?
I go in phases. There was a year that pretty much I strictly worked with non-addicts, guys in their late 20s, early 30s that were failure to launch some spectrum. I liked that a lot. There wasn't the anxiety of are they going to use or go out, but also
Mhm.
these guys had a lot of times they had never been heard, right? They hadn't had people to listen to their interests. They got, cast aside as weird or odd or, unique. And I like that. I went to Comic-Con a couple times. I did some really cool stuff with these guys that had no addiction problems. So I liked that for a while. I think I probably relate the best though to like 15 to 22.
Okay.
Especially like a 20-year-old who's maybe been to wilderness or been in and out of treatment already in high school and the beginning of college, and they've seen a lot of professionals. And so a lot of times, I I kind of go to meet them and I'm not what they're used to, right? Like I said, I don't take notes, I don't dress up. I don't like have a cookie cutter treatment plan. I'm not going to force AA or smart recovery or religion or whatever down their throats. And so I think I bond with those guys, right? Like I did a lot of damage in my like teenage to early 20 years before I got sober. And so I get it. Like they're not going to shock me. Um, they're not going to be shocked by my stuff. And so we kind of meet on this plane. I'll work with anybody. I work with a 70-year-old right now. Um, but I think the teenage to late 20s is kind of right up my alley just because it's kind of where I can get there emotionally pretty easy just to kind of meet them on their plane.
I I saw a video clip of you from somewhere in the recent past talking about the difference between sobriety and recovery. Will you touch on that for us?
Yeah. Um, I was told that early on in my recovery was sobriety's abstinence from drugs and alcohol or whatever is your vice and or you're addicted to, and recovery is a way of life. And I think that's was one of the best things I was ever told. how you are with your family, with your friends, when you're alone, how you stay healthy emotionally, physically, and everybody's recovery is different, right? So yeah, I'm sober. I've been sober 10 years. Cool. I've had some bad times within sobriety. I got through them, but I probably just stayed in sobriety for some of those times. And then for me, getting into recovery is spending time with my family, with my friends. I love to read, right? Like I figured that out real early on into sobriety was reading was a good escape for me. I like to learn. Playing golf's a big one. Just, trying to be the best version of me every day. And so I think that's recovery. And I think people get it confused, oh, he's in sobriety. It's like, well, yeah, but I could name 50 people I've known through my whole journey that, yeah, they're sober, but they don't live in recovery and they're miserable. And I would have drank if I were them day one of being in that mindset. And, right now, and I think in my mind, I have stages of my recovery, right? And I'm sure everyone does to a degree, but, like I said, the last 3 months have been kind of a roller coaster for me. And so now my recovery is, like I said, trying to embrace the unknown, being okay with whatever outcome comes, patience, not having control, right? I a lot of times think I can will things into existence. And sometimes I can, right? Like sometimes I put my mind to it and I throw it out there into the universe and my vibes get picked up and they weave all together perfectly. And then sometimes that doesn't happen. And so right now my recovery is trying to grow in that regard, right? Being secure in myself, being secure in work, being secure in friendships and whatever relationship it is. And um, so yeah, that's kind of my long-winded answer, but I just think you can spot it, right? You guys see it. You guys are in the field. You guys have friends that are in recovery. You can see the difference between someone that guy's, in sobriety, awesome, no knock on them. And then that guy lives in recovery, right? And I think sometimes my friends can say, "Hey, dude, you're not like, where's recovery right now?" Right? And I'm talking people that aren't even, in the program. They can just tell, like, yo, you're off. You're isolating. You're quiet. You're eating bad again, or you're not working out, or you're not reaching out. You're not playing golf. Um, and I think it's a cool thing when you can kind of find that little slot and you're in that recovery zone and right, you're still gonna have bad days. You're gonna still have stuff happen. But if I'm in that zone personally, I can, get my head to the pillow at the end of the night and be like, okay, today was really rough, right? Today
Yeah.
was a hard day, but I got to the pillow. I've got my book or I'm watching TV or I'm listening to music and I made it. So now I get some sleep. And tomorrow's a new one. And maybe that one's a bad day and you have 10 bad days in a row. But for me, it's like, just get your head to the pillow, do what you got to do because it will pass. Right. And,
Yeah. Well, it's just like you were talking about at the beginning of the call about the at the beginning of this uh, podcast about everything going pear shaped going to that game, but yet, at least you at least reached out for serenity and called out for it because you're a guy in recovery. And I mean, I remember when people would first say, my best day, a great day is when everything goes completely wrong and I still don't pick up. And I remember thinking like, that doesn't make sense. And then after having several, if not dozens of those days where everything does go exactly the way I don't want, and I do an inventory at night and it scoring really low on it. I wasn't kind and loving towards all, and I had a resentment and this, that, and the other, and just everything is just coming at me, but I still, still did what I needed to do and didn't pick up a drink or a drug. And like you said, can rest easy that night. But thank you for making that distinction because I think that gets lost in the shuffle, like so many things in life, and especially in our worlds where terms can mean two different things or more than two different things. And they get used here and used there, and maybe inappropriately because, yeah, I mean, I just like to your point, not knocking it. But when I see somebody sober, but not recovery, it's like, okay, well, I'm glad that you're not going to get a DUI because it's hard to get a
Right.
DUI when we're sober or get fired or miss work or overdraw our bank accounts. These are all possible, but or other than the DUI, but in general, the way I look at it is being sober. Like if I'm just sober, I'm probably not going to have the same consequences I had before. But when I'm
right.
in recovery, I'm able to not only, have a design for living, but can handle things as the things I don't particularly want to happen. My response is very different when I'm in recovery. I hope that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any one way of recovery, right? Like, people associate that with, "Oh, it's AA," or "It's this," or "It's that," and,
Yeah.
I think it goes way deeper than that, and I don't like I said, I have had so many stages of recovery where I mean, there was when I first got sober, my recovery was it was going to meetings, but it was way more than that. It was therapy, and it was working out and eating healthy and getting in a routine, right? Like, it took me a year to really nail down a legit routine in early sobriety. And then I've had phases where it's not my recovery has nothing to do with AA, but it's very spiritual and it's very, connected with, the universe and what I think we all kind of are fed by, positive and negative. And I think that word gets tossed around sometimes and it almost to me feels stigmatized, oh, he's in recovery. Oh, he's in the program. And it's like, everything everyone can have different versions of that. It's your plan, right? And that's what I try
Yeah.
to do with my guys is whatever you wanna do. I don't care if it's AA, church, you wanna throw yourself into volunteering, into work, into school. We're gonna have balance, and we're gonna have some routine, and we're gonna be healthy and, mind, body, and spirit, but I don't care what it looks like. I don't care
Right.
if you hit 90 and 90. I don't care if you hit 0 and a million. Like, I don't it's just you can see it when you find it for yourself. At least I could, right?
Yeah. And I'm with you on that, Fritz, because I think, I mean, everybody, number one, my philosophy is, as you said, everybody's got to find their own way. I think it is helpful to have guides to give suggestions and point you in the right direction. However, at the end of the day, I mean, I think anybody that walks the face of this earth is really looking for is just some peace and serenity, even when we don't know that's what we're looking for. And everybody's version of that can be completely different. It doesn't matter as long as we find it. I think that's the only thing that matters, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, looking for peace. Who knew? I mean, I always thought it was just if I just had more money, if I just had a girl,
Right.
whatever. But with a little bit of reflection, it's and all of those material things, all those horizontal fixes are never really it. It's all kind of vertical and what's already inside of us, waiting to be kind of unlocked and to be shared with others. Um, but yeah, I love that because even my kind of form of recovery clearly says that we don't have a monopoly on it. But then knowing that, I can still get kind of judgmental sometimes, especially with people I know who are new, who newly have just been to treatment and then they're getting out and then I'm like, so what are you doing? And they're, to me, it's nothing and it's not enough. And I just want to be like, don't you understand? But I just, all I can do is be there for them you know, and not tell anybody what to do because I used to think nobody likes being told what to do, but I know that I don't, and especially didn't when I was, before I
Right.
was able to, kind of turn my life around.
Right, yeah, I am still the same way, right? Another thing I try to work on is, you know, I'm gonna be told what to do by some people or I'm not gonna get my way and, just being okay with that, and that's kind of where in work with my guys, I don't if their parents wanna set boundaries where it's like they get this taken away or that taken away or they can't, I can't, that's not on me, right? Um I'm not the punisher, I'm not punitive, right? Like, there are life consequences, but no one most people that I see that come through that have addiction in some degree do not like being told what to do, right? And so, I see a lot of people try to be the drill sergeant or the army guy, and that happened to me when I was a teenager, and anytime somebody tried to get up in my face, it was like, "Yo, you wanna go? Like, I'm not you don't scare me," right? I needed the love and compassion, right? Like, softer, gentler way, I think that to a degree, I need that when I'm trying to get better, when I was getting sober and I found the perfect balance actually in Kay Fontenot, who my therapist now, she's loving and kind, but she is not scared to just, like, get up in my grill and, push, push, push in a loving way, and then, she also has the ability to back off and kind of meet me where I am, judge how the conversation's going, and I think that's I try to do that with my clients too. It's like, I can tell the days they wanna get pushed, not necessarily be told what to do, but get them going farther along. And then there's some days where I'm like, "Yeah, dude, we don't have to do anything. Like, we can sit in the Starbucks and be on our phone and not say 5 words to each other for the next hour." Like, I get it. Been there.
So you've told us how you've got into this line of work. How did you end up finding recovery?
Yeah. So, I think when I was 13, I guess 13 or 14, I got introduced to a therapist here in Dallas, Mickey Bickers. My mom, I'd seen a bunch of people, I'd been getting in trouble, behavioral, yelling, smoking pot. My parents didn't really know how far gone I was with drugs at this point, but just bad fights and just disobedient. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't like that word, but just like a total mess at home. And so I dropped an ounce of weed on the floor of my kitchen right in front of my mom, and she called Mickey, and I went to Mickey, and he was supposed to just give me a recommendation for a therapist to see because I kept just getting in fights with therapists that were abrasive. Shout out Chico West. And I'm just kidding. I love Chico, but I don't think 14-year-old Fritz loved Chico. And so Mickey just said, bring it back here every Monday. And he introduced me to AA, and I went to it was either my first or second meeting, and I heard this guy pressing group. And I loved going. I was 13 or 14, and you could smoke cigarettes inside. So I could smoke. I could go to a meeting a day and smoke, and my parents, you smell like cigarettes while I was at pressing group. And so I heard this guy say, um, he had been sober. He was an old timer. He said, I used to, drink and drink and drink, and I would get so sick. And while I was getting sick, I would try to think about how can I not do this tomorrow night, but still drink, right? And I had just that weekend said, I'm never drinking Kentucky Deluxe whiskey ever again. I'm just sticking to clear liquor because I keep getting sick on it, right? And then I just heard this guy say it, and I was young. I don't, yeah, I think I was 14 or 15. Yeah, probably 14, and it just clicked. It was, oh my God, I've got it, right? So I never had a problem admitting it. I knew.
Mhm.
And arrested a few times, went to treatment, IOPs, PHPs, in trouble at school. Um, that was a bad, a lot of people, know about my drug addiction. I was a bad, like, I would get in physical fights with my dad. Like, I would pick him. It's not like he, you know, beat me or anything, but I would initiate it, and we'd get in fights, and somebody'd get bloody, and my mom's freaking out, and she's the most patient human being in the whole world, and cops would come, and they'd have separated my dad and I'd be in handcuffs. It was bad, and punching holes in the walls, and I was a psychopath. I was so uncomfortable in my own skin, and so at home I wasn't always high. I mean, I was high a lot, but like at 3:30 after school, I can't be getting high right that minute. And so I get uncomfortable, I act out behaviorally. And then at nighttime, I'd get high, or during the day at school when I wasn't around my parents, I'd be high and I'd be fine. And so I knew I was always an addict since the beginning. I've never denied that. I've never been like, no. I never wanted to stop. I didn't have a problem with AA. I didn't have a problem with people in sobriety. I didn't think, I'd meet guys at IOP, I'd be like, people in sobriety, they're such squares, they're narcs, blah, blah. I had no problem with it. I was like, that's awesome. Good for them. I just didn't want it. And then, um, when I struggled all through high school and college, and I was 23, and I had some bad mental health stuff pop up in the beginning of 2014, and then that kind of dissipated, and I went to Mexico with some buddies, and I cried for like 6 straight days. I'm talking like on the beach crying, at the bars crying, at clubs crying. Like I couldn't control myself, and I didn't know what was going on, and I was talking to my dad real late every night, and my whole family, everyone knew I was an addict too by then, right? Like I was either getting enabled, or I was coasting by, but it was sad. It wasn't like, oh, there's Fritz Wild, right? Like I would go out and I was good time Charlie and have a blast, but then I'd go home and isolate. So the party stops, at 10, 11, 12, 1, and I'd go home and stay up till 5 and just hate myself. And so I know it all built up. And so that June, I woke up one day and I went and woke my mom up real early. I said, Mom, I got to go. She's like, go where? I was like, I have to go to rehab. And she said, call your dad. And my dad traveled a lot for work, and he was in LA. And I said, no, I can't call him. She said, call him, wake him up. And I called him and said, Dad, I got to rehab. He popped out of bed. What do we got to do? We scrambled, and, um, all the cliches in AA. I finally figured out sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? Like I wasn't out of drugs. I wasn't withdrawing. I was very physically dependent on opiates and benzos and alcohol, like bad. And I'd gone through those stages where most drug addicts know when you can't get it. That's a lot of times where it's like, I'm going to get sober. I swear, just like get me through, give me one more hit. Let this subside. I'd have seizures and wake up and be like, I'm not getting sober. I made it through this one, right? Like after, 20 or 30 seizures of benzo withdrawal, you're just kind of like, this is part of it. So I always tell people I had 1,000 Xanax, all the opiates I needed, booze by the plenty. And I woke up that morning, it was like, I just got to go. And it was kind of a test of me to get there. So I ended up going to California, but they didn't have a bed. And I was so stubborn about where I was going to go. I'm going here. I'm going here. And for 4 days, I kept getting kicked in the face by it's like, come today. Nope, the guy's staying. You can come tomorrow. Nope, the guy's staying. Then somebody that my dad and I are really close to passed away. So, my mom comes and wakes me up and says, "Hey, Richard passed away." And I think she was ready for me to be like, screw this. I'm done. I'm not going to rehab, like going on a tear. 10 people had died in the last 11 months of my life. And um, I got through that and I got on a plane and um, I Mickey helped me get there. He was a big part of it and all the people I'd met through my life. My mom's driving me to the airport. I'm out of my mind. I mean, I am throwing up. I'm smoking 2 blunts in her car on the way to the airport. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go to rehab. I'm gonna kick all the drugs and all the alcohol, but I'm smoking pot when I'm getting out. And I finished the first one. I've got the second one. I throw out the one. I looked at her and it was another one of these moments where it's like, no, I'm not. That was the last time I'm ever gonna smoke weed. And it just like that, a 10-minute switch. And then get to the airport. Um, I got my last fix. It was a good little fix to, see if I could get through getting to the plane and getting to California. And I run through security. They're calling my name above. And I get to the gate and I left all of my stuff in security, my bag, my shoe, my ID. And I'm like looking at this gate agent. I'm like, so I run back. I'm the last one on the plane. I run on the plane and I am out of my mind, sweating and hungover and everything's starting to kick in. And so the plane's taxiing. I get up and walk to the back and I tap a flight attendant who's like in the seat facing away from everyone. I tap her and she freaks. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm on the way to rehab. I need some water. I have no money. I gave my dad all of my cash, all of my credit cards that when I get to California, I can't run. Like I'm dying. She was like, you need to go to your seat. So I go to my seat and she comes and hands me a big bottle of water and a turkey sandwich. And she said, when we land, I need you to stay on after everybody gets off. And I'd had some run-ins with some people on some airplanes, in the past, so I know the drill. And I was like, "Oh, awesome. This is gonna end real well before as I go to treatment." So I wait, everybody gets off, and she comes and sits next to me, and she looks at me, and she said, I'm 16 years in recovery. This is awesome what you're doing." And again, it was one of those moments where it was like, "Holy shit." Uh, and I got the treatment. I stayed 90 days. I worked on a lot of trauma, right? I knew the drill. I could teach the classes. I knew relapse prevention and triggers and how the right side of my brain, the left side of my brain works. And it was the trauma, right? Like I think of trauma as, really bad things. And I had simple trauma. I had really bad trauma, right? I had some really rough experiences, but I also had some really little trauma that I had never thought about. Um, and at 60 days, they were like, "Hey, you can leave. Like, we'll let you go and you're great. But if you want to stay and do 30 days and really just do some really intense work, like if you can do it, do it." And I said, "Yeah, sign me up." And I stayed 31 more days and eventually came back to Dallas and I just kind of, was I was 23. I was young. And I just kind of felt my way around. And like 2 years into recovery, they finally got a good diagnosis on what was going on in my brain, finally had the drugs out of my system, and I was even keeled enough, right? I think that was an important day for me was when, I'm 2 years sober, I'm doing great, but there was still something going on, right? Nothing crazy, but I could just tell I was off, and I'd always had these weird things, and so I got, the right diagnosis and on some good meds and kind of how I could change my recovery to help with that side of things, and I tell my guys that all the time or my parents, "Oh, he's bipolar, he's schizophrenic, he's blah, manic." I'm like, "Yo, he hasn't been sober in 3 years. We're not gonna diagnose him with anything." Right? Like,
Yes.
for me, it took 2 years, right? And I was in therapy, I was seeing a psychiatrist, it just, um and so, yeah, that's kinda how I used for 11 years really hard, um, like, right from the get-go. I didn't just dip my toe in when I started. I, smoked weed after a church league basketball game, and the next day my drug dealer was like, "Have you ever tried hydrocodone?" And I said, "No." And he was like, "Here, take half of this." And I was like, "I'll take the full thing." I was back the next day, and then Xanax, and then, um oxys and, I loved alcohol. And it was just, people ask me, a lot of times the parents of my clients said, "What were you trying to escape? Was your home?" My home life was great. My mom was a rock star. My dad worked for the Texas Rangers. I grew up around professional athletes. My mom raised my brother and I. My brother, he turned out pretty awesome. I guess I did too in the end, but, nothing, there's not always a reason, right? But then I figured out, oh, that claustrophobic, so uncomfortable in my own skin, shed my skin, drugs fix that? Okay. Oh, but they make it worse when it's over. So then, and, yeah, I had a good, you know, I had a good foundation all the times that I went to IOPs or, all the, I mean, I went to so many AA meetings when I was in high school and, um, all the stuff, all the classes I had to do for courts and, a waste of time. Not really, right? Because when it clicked, and I had all of this information, right? And I tell parents that all the time. It's like, okay, look, your kid's 17. Like, I hate to break it to you, but there's a good chance this isn't working, right? This is not going to work. But it didn't work for me. But when it clicked, I had, you know, I could sponge up information. And so finally I had this sponge in the back of my brain. And I was like, oh, that's what this means. Oh, this is that. Oh, this is this. And um, yeah, that was kind of how I got there.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
it's
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, I loved also what you said just at the very end too about when it clicked and you were also able to tap into all the information you had absorbed before you were ready. And I mean, we see this where when people relapse, just because someone relapses doesn't mean they have to forget everything that they learned and all the work they did before that happens.
Yeah. And also it's the seed planting, right? You never
Yeah.
know what that's
Right.
gonna bud into later on in life. Could be weeks, years later, right? You never know.
Yeah. I mean, that was 10 years. It was 10 years when I went to or 11 years after I went to my first meeting that I got sober. And now it's been 20 years since my first meeting. I can see what that guy looks like. I know where he sat at every meeting,
Yeah.
right? Like I heard him, I heard him, I can hear him clear as day. I would drink and get sick and then think how I could drink the next day and not get sick. And I had a period probably for 2 years that every night I woke up on the bathroom floor of wherever I was staying, throwing up from, you know, alcohol, drugs, whatever it was. And I'm talking every single night. I used to say I was a professional, like at throwing up. I was so good at it. And every time I'd wake up on the bathroom floor, I'd be like, all right, so where did I push it too far today? Right. I knew I was going to throw up
Mm.
tonight, but I was still trying to scheme and figure it out. And that guy, I'm sure he's passed by now. I think he was probably in his 70s, but I just remember it so vividly. And so, like you said, the seeds, that seed has planted in me. And then other seeds in, well, I've been in recovery, right? It's continue to grow. I think for me, it's easy for me to be like, I'm 10 years sober. I have this awesome job in the recovery world. Um, you know, I'm good. I'm good, right? And I've gotten complacent, within the last year, 2 years, within the last 6 months. And it sucks. My mom tells this story that I looked at her one time when I was like 8 or 9, had nothing to do with drugs or alcohol, and said, "Mom, I have to always learn the hard way, don't I?" And, she always says that should have just been she should have known from that moment on. Shout out my mom. She's like 15 years sober. She's a rock star.
That's awesome.
And I still learn things the hard way, right? But it's like what I do with it, right? So learn something the hard way, regroup. Now I'm trying to get better, and I'm trying to, remember I can get better every day. The areas that something goes wrong in, even though I'm 10 years sober, it doesn't matter. I'm the same as the guy that's not sober. I'm the same as the guy who doesn't need to be sober. And so that's kind of the seeds thing. It's like I continually have seeds planted. And sometimes they're bad seeds and sucks, right? Like
Yeah.
the seed that got planted, you know, my character defects come out hard. And so then addict me wants to change it, control it, and hold it and grip it. And right. And now I want to, kind of hold it like your golf club, right? Who said hold it like you're holding an egg? I want to hold life like that. It's like I gotta time to take a step back, right? I didn't relapse. I didn't, kill someone, whatever, get a DUI, but I messed up or I did this wrong. Defects came out. So now let's take a couple steps back and let's look and be like, this sucks. The situation you're in sucks. The stuff you put people through sucks, but what do I do now to get better, right? Where do the amends come into play? Where does like looking internally at myself play? Um, do I need to work less? Do I need to work a little more? Get back into a different routine? Start working out again? Is it whatever it is? And so, that's kind of been my theme, the last 6 months. And I think it's, been awesome for me is that, yeah, cool. I'm 10 years sober. Like, who cares? Like, I could right now just like going up and it would not be hard. Right.
Yeah.
And, I just got to keep going. I know y'all know it's an everyday thing. And I used to hate one day at a time, even in recovery, I hated one day at a time. And then early on in sobriety, there was a time where it was like, I'm going to smoke weed. Right. And I was going to meetings and I was going to therapy and I was doing everything right. And every day it was like, okay, I could smoke weed. I could smoke weed. And Mickey told me, he just said, and I wasn't even seeing Mickey at this point. We had become such good friends. And he said, just tell yourself you're going to get high tomorrow. So I'd wake up and I'd go to the gym and I'd work out. And, at the time I was working for Fox Sports and I'd do whatever I had to do. And then I'd say, okay, I'm going to get high tomorrow. Tomorrow around 2:00, I'm going to color red and I'm going to, buy some weed and I'm going to get high. But I got to the pill that night and I kept putting it off. And to me, that was my one day at a time thing. And so now I have one day at a time, like today you feel claustrophobic. Today you feel X, Y, and Z. Don't act out on it until tomorrow. Get through today. Today's going to suck. It's going to be shitty. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be whatever. But just get to the pillow, right? Just get there. And then I keep notes and I go to therapy or I call Jesse or I call whoever and work it out with them, right? And so that's kind of, I like the seed thing. You're onto something there. I'm going to brainstorm that some more.
For sure.
Well, man, that amazing, Fritz. Well,
Yeah.
we will wrap it up here. That seems like a good place to stop. How do people find you?
Yeah, website not there right now. I don't know. I'm kind of hidden. If you're in Dallas, I just got my phone number out. Like, see, okay, you just put me on the spot.
Yeah,
Go for it,
we
man.
want people to
Hey.
find you if you want to be found.
Got this. I think you just search my name. My LinkedIn's online.
Okay.
And I have you'd find me Fritz Deichert. But yeah, I appreciate y'all having me on. I've watched some previous episodes. You guys have had some awesome guests. You've had some big names, and then you've had some people I'd never heard of, and their messages were awesome, right? I thought it was, you'll do a really good
It's
job.
a lot of fun.
Well, thank you. You were an amazing guest yourself. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. It was great.
Thanks, guys.
If you liked what you heard today or just want to know more, give us a call on 919-670-8119 or visit us at newwatersrecovery.com. Thank you.